Well, guys, we just want to welcome Bianca to the podcast today. Bianca, actually, we had her, at first, I found Bianca through a school that I'm taking on Monday nights. She helps lead a lot of the prophetic. And I just love, Bianca, the way you interact with people. You just have this really beautiful way of connecting and making the prophetic seem super easy, super accessible, super practical. So we want to touch a little bit on that today. But also we had her on our recent course that we did, a mentorship called Go-To Girls that y'all have heard us talk about. And so we thought, hey, we want to expose her not just the Go-To Girls audience, but to our wider audience. So thank you so much for joining us today, Bianca.
Thank you for asking me. It's a pleasure to hang with you ladies. You do all the fun stuff. So.
We do get to do a lot of fun stuff.
We do have fun.
So tell us about the accent. Tell us a little of your origin story, kind of how you came to be a person that we would want to have on the podcast and be on Go-To Girls and do all the fun things that we get to do as daughters in the kingdom.
Yeah. Well, your producer can yell cut at any point in time. So, I would say I am from Namibia, which is on the west coast of Africa between South Africa and Angola. And I was born there, grew up there. And my family origins is basically the United Nations. On my father's side, Italian, and on my mother's side, African and German. And it's a blast to grow up in a family with so much cultural passion.
Yeah.
Because we never were quiet. Everything is loud and there's constant activity. And so I was the only daughter between all the boys. And so I had to establish my spot early on.
I'll teach you to fight.
I will be counted here, people.
I will be heard.
Yeah. And so just throughout being raised by my dad, as I came into the understanding of the kingdom theology and what the kingdom is about, realizing he raised us kingdom. Mm-hmm. And never really thought of that ever growing up. We were raised Roman Catholic, but my dad always had this different spin on everything.
Wow.
And he really talked to us about the love of the Father and how the Father is, the goodness of everything that we see around us, and how we're supposed to just embrace that even when things look like they're going bad, when they will get better because they're supposed to.
Wow.
And so that was just something that I never really took in as a kid. And so through various things that happened in my life, I ended up actually walking away from my family because I got involved in witchcraft and the occult. And my father said, nope, I have a whole family to keep safe. You need to leave. And everybody thought that he was a horrible dad for kicking me out the house, but he saved my life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he didn't do that, if he didn't put me through that, I never would have come to the understanding of who Jesus truly is and the power that he carries, which is so much more than any other power that people can claim to have.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how I really actually entered into an event that Miles Monroe was having on in my town. And I was with my little clan of people, and we were going to go and cause havoc and everything like that. And as I walked into the room, he just yelled out, "You there with the black hair, come. And I just was like, oh, he's crazy. But okay, if he wants a piece of me, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ready to fight.
And my arrogance hit the floor pretty quickly.
Wow.
Because he just started prophesying over me, and I didn't really know what it was at the time. I didn't realize that the prophetic was a thing, even at all. And so he mentored me for the time that he was there in the country. I got to spend time with him and just be mentored by him. His wife was there, and he had his team of people, and it was just unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And then, as with most things, he left town, promising he would be back. And I went into just this complete struggle inside of me.
Wow.
Like, what do I do now? You know, it was a safe place to be around him. And now I'm back to doing what I'm supposed to do. And so I went through this internal struggle, went through the process of trying to take my own life because I was like, I can't.
Wow.
It was, I don't know what it feels. It felt like my skin couldn't contain everything that was going on inside of me.
Was it, just a clarification point, so you had gone into the occult, you had this encounter with Jesus. Did you ever have to go through deliverance with that, or was it just in the meeting of Jesus? Or do you think this struggle point came because the occult's like, no, we're not letting you go?
Yes, exactly. That last one. The occult was like, and interesting thing, I started hiding from them because you don't really leave certain sects of the occult alive. And so I had a friend who had been praying for me for many, many years, and he and his wife really kind of took me in and brought me to their church. And the pastor was standing in front of me this one Sunday night, and he just looked at me and he said to me, "You're sitting on a fence and you can't sit there any longer. You have to make a choice.
Yeah.
You have to choose which way to go. If you choose the path of death, tonight is your last night.
Oh.
If you choose the path of life, there is abundance waiting for you."
Wow.
And I just looked at this guy and I was like, get out of my face.
Yeah.
Go away. But when I went back to my friend and I said, I want a recording of that because I'm going to out this guy for saying things like that. It's like, whatever. I was feeling very angry and all the rest of it. Well, they couldn't find it on the tape.
What?
But he was sitting next to me and he's like, I heard it, but we can't find it on the tape. And it was just at that moment I realized that there is something else at play here. There is a spiritual realm around me that I have not even investigated to encounter.
Yeah.
And so my friend really took me to the pastor, and they started just mentoring me. I went through 10 weeks of mentorship. I had to report to the church every single day for my safety. Whether I was cleaning toilets and listening to worship or sitting in his office and asking him questions about the Bible every time he was invited somewhere for a prayer conference or to talk to a group of people, he took me with him. So I really learned firsthand,
My goodness,
just what life is like on the other side. And then his wife took me in as well. And she's like, we've got to get rid of all this stuff that you've got, your metal on you and all your black, everything is just black around you. And I was like, it's a safe color for me. I don't see it as being anything bad or anything like that.
Right.
But anyway, so I went through a little bit of a transformation, came back to my dad, explained to him what had happened. He just nodded his head and kind of smiled his smile. And it really took off from there. The attacks never stopped until really the week before I left Namibia to come to America.
Wow.
So
Can I pause you, Bianca?
Yeah.
I feel like so many families have a child who's off the rails for whatever reason, right? Like this child went to college and got brainwashed by this professor and now doesn't believe in God or whatever it is. What did your dad do? I know, obviously, he said you can't live here anymore, but what else did he do that was right that we can learn from? And then what did he do where you're like, wouldn't do that again? That made things hard for me. I'm just curious, like as having a prodigal, what can we learn from what your dad did? Because he did a lot of things right.
He planted the seed when we were kids, and he believed in the scripture that it says that, if you teach the child the ways of the Lord, they will return to it.
Yeah.
And he just stood by that. That was his faith. For the 11 years that I wasn't home, apparently I found out later on, my dad would drive through the city at night just looking for me to see if I was okay.
Gosh.
If he saw my car anywhere or if he saw me anywhere, he just, kind of kept guard over me from a distance.
Wow.
And it's hard because you think of that and I just go, wow. So, he locked his family in for the night. Everybody was safe, made sure, and then he went out. And put himself in danger to do that, to go after me type of thing, but never let me know that he was there. I didn't know it until years later.
Wow.
That is what he was doing. And then when I did come back, he just kind of smiled. He was like, because God didn't want anything else for you. To him, it was a matter of fact. And, in the process through the years, as I've worked with families, especially when I was at that church in Namibia, I worked with families who were concerned about their kids getting involved in the occult. And I can say this, not everything is the occult.
Yeah.
The occult is very specific. They're not going to go after a teenage child who's wanting to wear black and put black eye makeup on and black lipstick and black nails and all the rest of it. That doesn't cause chaos at all. They're looking for people of power, people with leadership. And I really never understood that until I had my conversation with Miles Monroe.
Wow.
Because the first thing he said to me is, who are you? Because you have power. That's why they want you.
Wow.
And in the group that I was part of, there were bank managers, judges, court judges, there were, police officers.
Okay, sorry. I have to just double click. I don't know a lot about the occult, and I think most people don't. So when you say occult, are we talking Satan worship? Are we talking Ouija boards? Like, what do you mean by that?
And I'm sure in Namibia, it's a very different expression.
But like witchcraft can be a lot of things. So what were you involved in? I'm just curious because I don't think most people understand it. When they say occult, it's like, oh, well, my kid wouldn't do that. Well, I don't know what it even is. Is it a seance? I don't know.
Well, the occult itself means to be hidden from the eye. And so it's what people don't talk about. Like if everybody's talking about a Ouija board, that's experimentation. That's not true. What you see in the movies is not really how it works. That type of thing. Tarot cards, they're nice cards with pictures on them and they're printed on regular paper.
Right.
They carry no power. The resource of the occult is people.
Interesting.
It's people, and people of power can manipulate circumstances and events and things to make it work for the advantages that they have for themselves. And within the spiritual realm, it can create a lot of chaos to the point where you can basically affect someone to think, they have the 5 pillars, for example, of Satanism. The first one is make the person doubt themselves.
Wow.
Okay, so you start speaking into someone's life, you're manipulating them with words. They're doubting themselves. The second thing you do is you begin to discredit them. So they trust you, and then you use any information that they've given you to discredit them.
Sounds
and
like
then the third thing is you isolate them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you take them from their families, you speak into their lives. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
You speak into their lives, we are your family. We love you. We believe in you. You can do this. You can do that. You can do the next thing, et cetera, et cetera. And then the fourth thing is from the isolation, you get out of them exactly what you want. Then you put them to work basically for you. And if there's ever any resistance, you take them out, number 5. Or you basically convince them to take themselves out, which is also what happened to me because I wouldn't continue along that path.
Yeah.
And so really the confusion that I had felt inside of me is because I was working with people who I thought were my friends, explained to them what happened to me, and then they would be like, well, there is no way out for you. There is no way out. It's, through your death, everything will be righted type of thing. And so it's not elements of things that you can find anywhere in any store. It's just, if your kid is involved in things like that, the best thing that you can do is to continue to pray and to believe that everything does get exposed eventually.
Yeah.
Right. And the truth doesn't need to be slapped over someone's head. If you just release the truth, the truth will find its way to that child. And so
wow, that's good.
That is really something that I encourage a lot of parents, because parents fight for their child, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's, if I think of the story of the prodigal son, even that father didn't go after his son. He let him go.
Yeah.
You know, he let him go because he knew his faith and what he has and the goodness in his heart and his love for his son would return his son to him.
Wow.
And so that's really where I came back, was I knew that, you know, I have the love of my father.
Yeah.
And so when I did come back home, they didn't recognize me physically. Wow. Like I literally stood 10 centimeters in front of my mother, and she was like, "Can I help you?"
What?
Like, "Hi, Mom."
Oh.
And she's like, I'm sorry, I think you've got the wrong house.
What? Because you had physically changed from the darkness.
Yes.
Jeez.
And that's the thing, is you know,
chills.
and in what I do for health and healing, I do what's called facial reading. So you look at someone's face and it'll tell you what's going on inside their body.
Right.
And so a lot of times I've worked with people where I would actually look at certain lines on their face, or you know, what their skin tone is or what's going on, and be like, have you ever done more than just you know, playing with tarot cards or Ouija boards, or get a little spell book and, you know, all these types of things. And then they're like, oh my gosh, how did you know? Because the face does change, and the face begins to get distorted in a way. When you're dealing with, because you're dealing with bitterness and anger and vengeance and hate on a level that your body really can't contain.
Wow.
Okay, don't read my face. Just kidding.
Sorry,
I'm like, what do these little commas, right?
Nasolabial
folds. What does that mean?
No.
Oh, these are our indicators that we are going through that wonderful change of life. When we have to start taking probiotics and everything. Yeah,
taking probiotics. Oh gosh. I'm fascinated by. I mean, sorry, it's just I don't talk to people like this.
I know.
And I just think it's so good for parents to be aware that, like, that's how it starts, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and I feel like, you know, they always talk about, oh, well, this is a gateway drug. It's like, well, and you know, honestly, Bianca, what would you say is a gateway drug for the occult? Not drugs, literally. I know that that is a gateway, but like, what if you were seeing things in children? What are your, like, oh my gosh, forearm fire alarm, you know, kind of thing? What's your antenna when they are? What are the things that you see that could, you know, be very dangerous that parents don't know? I know this isn't what this podcast is about, but I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah,
control. Yeah. Okay.
Control and power. If you think of most children growing up in a family, they get to a certain age, and the age starts at about 11 or 12, where they want to exercise a little bit more of their independence. They want to prove themselves to their parents, right? Mm-hmm. They want their parents' approval in pretty much everything. And when the parent kind of pushes that away and pushes that down, and not now, or you're too young, or you can't do this, you know, we use negative responses with our children when we feel like they are wanting to exercise anything that we may feel that we may not be able to control. And so they start hungering for control and power, because it gives them a sense of independence, a sense of, look, I'll show you what I can do. And so, you know, in some families, there's a very strict I know in my family, there was a very strict expectation of what we would become when we were adults, just because of who my family was in my country. We would serve the nation. Right. You know, we would be the person that other people can lean on, this type of thing. We would be in leadership. That was really the calling on our lives. Wow. And I didn't really always agree with that. I was like, let me grow into that. I don't always want to be the person who has to behave myself because I'm an example. I want to let loose sometimes, and so that is something that's really huge with a lot of children that actually get into the more sinister parts of occult versus the surface level of occult. The surface level, it's an experimentation for power, but it's play power, right? It's like, ooh, look what I did. I could move a thing on a board. Well, you know what? Jesus could move mountains. So there you go. Who's got the better power? And then to also make sure that, in our culture today as believers, we really put a lot of focus on fighting an enemy. We really put a lot of focus on rebuking an enemy. We really put a lot of focus on the power the enemy has when there's actually nothing.
Yeah.
But if you give a 2-year-old everything that he wants, he's going to want more. And so I really just look at that enemy as being a 2-year-old that throws a tantrum.
Wow.
Right? I want your child. Oh, no, you can't have him. He belongs to Jesus, type of thing. And really to call on the power of Jesus into the child's life versus sitting in your closet and rebuking and crying out and reading damnation scriptures and things like that. It's really understanding that the power of Jesus Christ is the ultimate power that we haven't even begun to experience how to harness that for the benefit of the kingdom.
Yeah. Wow.